Well, welcome to Homemade. My name is Nico Muratori. I'm so excited to be here today with all of you. We're joined by our chef in the chat today, Samantha. So if we have any questions throughout class, we're going to be putting some little prompts in there for you to respond to. And so make sure that you take a look at those as they come up throughout class. Today we are partnering with Dole, and we're so excited to be joined by Melanie, who is a registered dietitian from the Dole Fruit Company today. Melanie does a lot of work with their recipes, making sure that things are really nice and healthy. And today we'll be chatting with Melanie about how to use, some alternate sweeteners, possibly some alternate, dairy alternatives in our baking and our cooking, and just how to incorporate some really healthy recipes into our repertoire on the daily basis. So really excited to have Melanie here today with us. Today we're going to be doing a Elvis-inspired bread pudding. And so what does that mean? Has everyone heard of the Elvis sandwich before? And the Elvis sandwich is something that the king himself loved to eat. And this was basically a peanut butter, banana, and bacon sandwich that then would be toasted in a skillet, get that bread all golden brown and delicious. We got sweet, we got savory, we got that nice creamy peanut butter in there. And so it's this classic sandwich that's well known in the South and maybe not so much in other parts of the country. But today we're going to be making a bread pudding that is based on that. So think we're going to use peanut butter in there. We're going to use some really awesome bananas in there, and use those kind of alternate sweeteners to make this a really delicious and healthy and nutritious dish. So how the class is going to go today, we'll do a little overview before we jump into our actual cooking here. But we have a few different things we need to get done. We're going to be making a custard. And so a custard is usually based with eggs, but today we're going to be doing it with a little bit of a substitute, and they're going to use some ground flaxseed. And we'll chat with Melanie in a little while about why we would use ground flaxseed in a recipe like this. And so we'll make that custard in our blender, get that all blended up nice and smooth. And then we're going to soak our bread. And so when you're making a bread pudding, you always want to soak your bread for, somewhere between 5 and 15 minutes to make sure that it all hydrates and really pulls in that custard so it stays super juicy and perfect. And then the next step after that, we're going to cook some turkey bacon over here in our pan. We're going to talk about a couple different ways that we can cook turkey bacon at home, make it nice and delicious and crispy. And then following that, we'll just go through the steps of actually building our bread pudding, baking it in the oven, and then how do we eat this recipe? We're going to eat that at the end with a little bit of peanut butter, a little bit of drizzled maple syrup. It's going to be amazing. I cannot wait to try it with all of you, and I can't wait for you to make it at home. Um, so before we get started here, we are just going to bring our guest Melanie in. Hi, Melanie.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
We're so excited to have you here today.
Yeah, so let me just dive right in. Like, why are we focused on an Elvis-inspired bread pudding? I mean, the bananas are obvious, but some of you may know that the new Stitch movie is coming out in the end of May, and we've had a partnership with between Dole and Disney for the past 10 years. So we just thought it's like perfect timing going into summer. And of course, Stitch, if you've seen the first movie, had a thing for Elvis. It's kind of how he learned his manners. And it was just like really sweet and playful. And this is also a sweet and playful kind of dessert and take on everyone's favorite bread pudding. So we're excited. And we have a ton of downloadables on dole.com. And if you're in the store, you might notice really cute Stitch inspired stickers on our pineapples and bananas. And if you're a playful adult or have kids in your life, there are some cool coloring sheets and stuff like that too. So hopefully we can drop that link in the chat and you can check it out.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Excited to see all those out in the store, and then inspired to make our Elvis bread pudding today.
Yeah.
So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is start to build our custard. And so when we're making that custard, what we want to do first is grab a blender. Some custards can totally be made in a bowl, but for today, we want to do this one in the blender because we're going to be putting some ingredients in there that need a little bit of time to kind of sit and hydrate. And so before I actually get started with my blender, first thing I'm going to do is grab my dates. And so I have some really nice pitted dates here. Dates are really lovely as an alternative sweetener here. These are Very delicious medjool dates. I'm just going to chunk these up a little bit. And then I want to get just a splash of warm water on these dates for just about 5 minutes to help hydrate them. Whenever we're dealing with a dried fruit, such as a date, raisins, dried cranberries, etc., if we're using them in a recipe where we want to have them be kind of nice and soft, what you can do is just put a little bit of warm water on top of these and just let them sit for a few moments. So I'm just going to go back to the sink, get a splash of warm water on my dates while we get the rest of our custard set up and ready to go. All right, we got our dates sitting with some warm water. So I'll set those aside and start to think about working the rest of our custard here. So we have some really awesome ripe bananas here. And when I'm working with bananas, and especially in a dish like this, I want to be using bananas that have a good amount of natural sugars. And so when we buy green bananas, those are rather unripe. And we want to let those ripen on the counter. You can put them in a brown paper bag in like a nice warm, dry place in your cupboard, and they may ripen a slightly bit faster that way. And so once I have these bananas at a nice ripeness, I'm just going to peel them and add them into my blender first. The bananas are going to provide us texture, and they're also going to give us just that really nice kind of natural sugars that we all know and love from a ripe banana. And some alternatives, if you didn't have any fresh bananas today that were ripe, if you had some bananas in the freezer that maybe you peeled when they were at peak ripeness and put them in the freezer, those would be totally fine to use in a custard like this. There's definitely a place for using either the fresh ones or the frozen ones, but as we put them into the blender, you'd want to probably defrost them first if you are pulling them out of the freezer. Samantha, how are we doing in the chat? Any questions we have there today?
So far, we've got lots of people excited, and somebody was asking about instead of dates if they could use figs because they have a fig plant growing at home.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I think that would be a lovely substitute. If you have dried figs at home from your fig tree, that sounds like a lovely way to use some, again, natural fruits, natural sugars in our baking. That would work totally fine. So I love that idea. So in my blender, we've got bananas so far. Next up, we're going to add in our peanut butter. And so I just have about a quarter cup here of some unsalted, just naturally creamy peanut butter. Super delicious. Get that quarter cup into our blender. And then next up, we have vanilla extract. This is, we all know it. We all love it. Use it for cookies, use it for baking. Oh, excuse me. A little bit of vanilla extract in there just for some more of that kind of nice flavor that we all know and love from bread pudding. Vanilla is definitely a classic flavor profile when it comes to this dish. Really tasty. Next up is two ingredients that you may not have had in bread pudding before. One of them is cinnamon, which we know, just a nice spice to add in a little bit of that extra flavor that we're looking for, kind of to combine this banana, peanut butter, cinnamon, really tasty together. The other one here is ground flaxseed. So we're going to add all that into our blender. And the reason we're using these ground flax seeds is that we're making a non-dairy version of this and an egg-free version of a bread pudding today. And the flaxseed, when we blend all of this together in our custard, the flaxseed helps as a binder, and it will also help when we bake this that everything stays nice and cohesive and looks just like a bread pudding that may have eggs in it. But here we can substitute in these ground flax seeds, which is a really awesome substitute. And so next I'm going to go in with my almond milk. We're doing a cup and a half of almond milk here. And again, this is just a nice alternative to a dairy-based bread pudding. Utilizing an alternative milk such as almond milk is a really great way to change this recipe up a little bit, make it a little bit healthier for us. Samantha, what do we have in the chat?
Oh, I was just curious about your use of, how you choose which different alternative milks, if you have any preferences in general.
Awesome question. And so I think it really depends on your taste preference. Personally, I really enjoy the flavor of almond milk, but I know there's some folks out there who can't have nuts. And so I think an oat milk would be another alternative milk that we could use for something like this. Alternatively, soy milk and rice milk would work as well. My personal favorite, I really enjoy the flavor of almond milk. And when we're making a dessert that already has peanuts in it, kind of doubling down on that nutty flavor with our just unsweetened almond milk in here, I think will be really nice for this dish. But folks can use what they have at home. If you have some oat milk, if you have almond milk, give those a try. You could also make this recipe with regular milk in it. It's not, this isn't to say that you cannot use that, but for today, we just want to show how great this recipe works out with using an alternative milk. Next up, I'm going to add just a little pinch of salt. Not much, just about a quarter teaspoon. And one of the reasons that I like to add salt into this dish and into baking in general is that it really helps with balance. And when we have a lot of, some sweet flavors with those bananas, with the dates that we're going to add in there, with that creamy almond milk, to balance everything out just with a little bit of salt is really amazing. One of my favorite examples of salt in pastries is a little bit of crunchy salt on top of chocolate chip cookies is just a revelatory experience. And so adding in just a little bit of salt into basically every baked good that I make really helps with that balance of flavor. So, Melanie, do you want to talk to us a little bit about using some alternative sweeteners like dates and bananas in our baking?
Yeah, I think often as a dietitian, I hear that, you know, clients or, even within our dole recipes that, our consumers really are looking for lower sugar alternatives because really we're not supposed to have more than 10 teaspoons of sugar, added sugar in a day. And that's not to mean we can't have any, but it adds up quickly. So when you're using a natural source of sugar, like a really ripe banana or a date, and actually both of them have really important soluble fiber, which is another nutrient that most people aren't getting enough of, you're getting a lot more nutrition and you're not sacrificing the sweetness. So, if you have heart disease or you're watching your blood sugar levels and you're trying to manage your weight, like, making swaps like this can be really helpful.
Awesome. I love it. And they're delicious.
Yes.
Two of my favorite naturally sweet things, dates and bananas. So awesome.
Exactly.
And Samantha, do we have something in the chat? Any questions?
Yeah, people were asking about if you need to let the flax egg sit for a while before incorporating it, or if it works that way well in this recipe.
Awesome question. And so when I blend my custard, I'm actually going to let that sit and kind of thicken up for between like 5 minutes is usually enough. And we'll notice that when we blend it, the texture might be a little bit thin, but as it sits and that flax, the ground flax kind of sits in there and it helps hydrate and kind of starts to pull in some of that moisture. Then once we have that at a nice sort of thick place, we're going to add that into our cubed up bread, and then we'll let that sit for a few more minutes and let everything continue to soak and thicken up before we actually bake it. So yes, I do recommend giving, somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes for that flax to sort of hydrate and to do its job there. Melanie, do you have any tips on baking with flax instead of as an egg substitute?
Yeah, we did a lot of this recently, especially with the egg prices going up,
Yeah.
and we, shared that flax is a great substitute, especially in baking. So I don't know if you have a preference, Nico, but I think we did 2.5 or 3 tablespoons of ground flaxseed with, 2 to 3 tablespoons of warm water, and that's, if you wanna make your egg and dump it. Here, we've got all the liquid with the almond milk, so we don't have to let it sit on the side first before adding. But that's one. We've used aquafaba as kind of like a meringue, like an egg white substitute. And bananas are a really great substitute also in maybe like a pancake or, something quick where it's like eggs are acting like a binder. So the trick with substituting your eggs is really knowing like what its function is in the recipe, and you might have to research that a little bit, but there are really a lot of options if you're trying to avoid eggs for an allergy reason or maybe it's a dietary reason.
Absolutely. And so, just like Melanie said, when we make our custard here today, because we have all that moisture already, we didn't need to mix the flax egg on its own. We're mixing it in the blender, and that's where the activity will happen. And so, I'm going to go ahead and actually turn our blender on here and get our custard going so we can move on to soaking our bread. So, I'm just going to turn my blender on to, let's see, maybe just speed 1 to start. And then as my mixture is blending here, I'm just going to turn the speed up a little bit. And I'm going to blend this on high for about 15 to 20 seconds. And the reason why I want to really make sure I'm blending this all together is for multiple reasons. Specifically, we want to make sure that all of those dates are getting pureed into our almond milk and banana mixture. And then really making sure that that peanut butter is, fully mixed in here as well. And then also our flax, we want to make sure that we're really incorporating everything together. And then let's take a look at this. pop our blender open here and we'll take a look at what we have. And so far, I'm feeling like this is it's a really nice texture, a really nice consistency here. And as it sits, it's actually going to continue to thicken up before we dump that onto our bread.
And Nico, we have another question about the flax. If somebody has flax seeds, um, asking if they need to grind them beforehand before incorporating into their mixture, or if they could just put the regular seeds in and then blend that up together.
So typically, I would say you do want to break down those flax seeds first, whether it's in a spice grinder, mortar and pestle, etc. I guess today, because we're putting all this in the blender, there's a chance that those seeds would blend up in there and break down. But I think I would still recommend breaking them down ahead of time because when you're blending, a small seed like a flax seed in such a liquid like our custard today, if you blended it for 2 or 3 minutes, I'm sure we would break down each of those flax seeds and make sure that they're actually ground. But just to be safe, I would say crack them ahead of time in a blender, in the spice grinder, in the mortar, just to make sure that you're having that nice broken down flaxseed texture as soon as you start to expose that to the moisture, which is our almond milk here in the recipe. So now that we have our custard done, we're just going to start our bacon over here. We want to get our turkey bacon searing just so it's ready to go for when we build our bread pudding. And so I'm just going to go over to the stove here, turn it on, and then we'll chat about our turkey bacon.
And then I was just going to share another fun thing from Joel. I feel like when I was a kid, I really associated Dole with Dole Whip, like at Disneyland. But they've got a little bit of a, Dole Whip inspired, and also like blue Hawaiian inspired dessert. And I can share that link in the chat. Super fun, bright blue. So a fun thing to do for spring.
And that blue is actually a natural color too. So it's made with bananas, pineapples, and then blue spirulina. I guess Elvis was in this is Elvis inspired recipe, but Dole Whip is iconic. So it's also very delicious. Tastes like springtime.
That's awesome. We love that for a nice seasonal, healthy alternative. So in my pan over here, I'm just going to put a splash of oil in the bottom of my pan. We have different ways that we can cook our turkey bacon. If we wanted to roast the turkey bacon in the oven and bake it, what we could do is just put it on a sheet just like this and pop this in the oven at 375 for 12 to 15 minutes until we get nice golden brown texture all around. But if you don't have that much time and you want to go a little bit faster, what you can do is actually brown the turkey bacon in the pan. And so I just put a little splash of oil just so that my turkey bacon does not stick. We obviously have much less fat here than if we're working with a traditional pork bacon. And that's one of the reasons we chose this is for a healthy alternative, is that kind of nice lower fat content. And so I'm going to start getting these turkey bacon into our pan over here and getting them searing. And Melanie, do you have any sort of tips of why we want to use turkey bacon in this recipe?
I think the main reason is if you're watching, if you have maybe a heart condition or heart disease, which many Americans do, you want to limit your saturated fat. And saturated fat is solid at room temperature. So if you think about butter or lard, that's in bacon, like that's solid at room temperature. And once you heat it, it kind of melts. But when it's back in your body, it kind of clogs the arteries. So turkey bacon still has some fat and fat has flavor, but not as much saturated fat. And, my husband, bacon lover, the other day he said to me, I think I like the turkey sausage better than the pork sausage. And I was like, okay, win. So it really does taste good.
It does. I agree. I think that the turkey bacon also achieves like a really nice crisp texture when you cook it. And it has
Yeah.
a nice smoked flavor as well. And so it's a really awesome healthy alternative to, using regular bacon in a breakfast sandwich and a breakfast burrito in this Elvis inspired dessert. So it definitely has a place in all of our kitchens. And similarly, I, used to be pork sausage aficionado, loved it. And I have also recently transitioned to eating more chicken sausage and turkey based sausages. I find that they're really delicious and just that slight leaner, more, a little bit of a healthier fats for us. Just works a lot better for all of our diets.
Yeah.
So turkey bacon's gonna sear over here in the pan. If you notice, I put a little bit of a weight on top of it, and one of the reasons I love to use a weight when I'm cooking the turkey bacon is that it really tends in the pan, tends to bubble up and create like a wave-like texture where we don't get crispness on the entirety of the turkey bacon. And so weighing it down with a little press like this, bacon press, meat press, whatever you want to call it, can really just help us with that texture, making sure we get even browning all across that turkey bacon. So nice tip and technique for if you're cooking that turkey bacon at home in the pan. Really nice way to get that texture, weigh it down with a weight. While that's working, we're going to get back to making our bread pudding. And so, most important ingredient of bread pudding, I would say, probably your bread. Today, we're going to be using a really awesome whole grain and whole wheat little loaf here. You could use, whole wheat sliced bread that you can get at the store, but this is a really awesome little whole grain loaf that I'm excited to be using today. And Melanie, tell us about why we would want to use whole grains and whole wheat in our bread pudding.
Yes. And, I think, um, you know, sometimes transitioning from a white bread to a whole grain bread can be difficult, but there are so many benefits. Like whole grain bread is made with the whole like wheat, right? So it's got the germ, the endosperm, it has everything, and it has all the nutrition and the B vitamins that come with it, which is a bonus, as well as fiber. So using a whole grain bread gives you that really important fiber, which men and women should be getting between 25 to 35 grams of fiber a day, and many of us are not, and that helps improve our gut health and our heart health and keep our arteries clean. So fiber has a lot of important functions. And when you can get it into a recipe like this that tastes so delicious and satisfying and has that natural sweetness, sometimes, I don't know if you would call it like earthiness. And whole grain wheat has a lot of flavor, and sometimes it's acquired. Nico, I don't know if you would agree with me, but I think the sweetness helps balance it all out. And I was thinking when I was cutting up my bread, this is a great recipe to use the ends for because no one likes the ends. So I made sure I put those in first so that they could soak up all the custard.
That's a great tip. Yeah, save your bread ends for your bread pudding. Very not the best for sandwiches, perfect for bread pudding.
Yeah.
I'm a whole wheat lover. I really enjoy both baking whole wheat bread and eating whole wheat bread. And I've found that as I've transitioned away from white flour into more whole wheat flours, I really crave that flavor of the whole wheat. And I also believe my body is craving the nutrition and all the fiber and all the other good things that come along with it that Melanie just mentioned. But whole wheat pasta is another great one that exists out there. You don't have to eat just kind of a white flour pasta. Give whole wheat pasta a try. Give the whole wheat bread a try, especially these multi-grain ones. I just think the flavor is superior and it's delicious and a beautiful loaf of bread.
And
Tons of flavor.
usually it has more protein too.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the whole grain breads, like I'm using a popular sprouted whole grain bread, but it's got 10 grams of protein per two slices. And I used at least, 8 here. So,
That's
you
amazing.
know, you're getting a really good amount of protein in a sweet dessert or snack that you normally wouldn't. And that's also kind of one of those buzz nutrients that everyone's focused on now.
So it's healthier, it's better for us, it has protein. It's all very exciting.
Yeah.
Just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna flip my bacon here real quick, and then we will get back into our building of the bread pudding. Do we have any good questions in the chat there, Samantha?
So far we are, talking about one person has some homemade bread that's a little denser. We were discussing some possible subs for that or adjustments to make with that. But also somebody was asking about if there's a place where we can find the nutrition for serving information for this recipe, or maybe that's something Melanie could talk about a little bit.
Yeah, Melanie, do you want to talk to us a little bit about the nutritional facts and the benefits of this recipe?
Yeah, so I always love analyzing the nutrition on the homemade recipes because I'm always pleasantly surprised. So this we're using a standard loaf pan, and I analyzed it for 8 servings. So you could, go smaller, but I think 8 is like a hefty portion, you'd be satisfied with that. It's got 270 calories, 11 grams of fat, only 2 are saturated. And in a day, you want to have less than 10, like 10 grams of saturated fat is ideally what we're aiming for. So this is good in that department. It's got 3 grams of fiber, which will depend on the kind of bread that you choose, but this is a generic whole grain bread. And it has 10 grams of protein per serving. And that could also go up depending on the kind of bread that you choose. And so that's all great, but without spending too much time, I mean, it's a good source of calcium and iron, potassium, vitamin E, thiamine. It's got more than 20% of niacin, the B vitamins, vitamin B6, pantothenic acid, selenium, copper, manganese. Like it literally is just a good or excellent source of like 75% of the nutrients on my panel. So it is like a really great dessert from the
That's
nutrition side.
that's amazing. I love to hear that because I definitely want to eat a lot of this.
Let's do it.
So just as we were learning about the nutrition facts there, I just went and mixed my custard in with my bread. And so you'll notice that if you saw when I poured the custard into there, it was actually a little bit thicker than kind of when it started. And that's because that flax was really able to hydrate and it was able to start to thicken up our mixture here, just like those eggs would. And then now that I have it kind of sitting with my bread, I want to let this soak for the next couple of minutes while we prepare everything else that's going to go into our bread pudding. So I'm just going to set this off to the side and let it just kind of keep soaking up. Let the bread cubes themselves keep soaking up all of that lovely custard. So we make sure that we get it all into the bread. And then once it bakes, it becomes this beautiful kind of cohesive loaf that we can cut a piece of and enjoy. So I'm going to set this right over here. And we're just going to get back to our turkey bacon. Cook this for around, it's been about 7 or 8 minutes now. And I flipped it halfway through using that way to keep it pressed. We have a nice crispy texture on all sides, so I'm going to pull that out of the pan and I'm going to dry it off on just a paper towel to make sure that we kind of get the residual fat from the pan and from that turkey bacon off. And then we'll cut that up and add it in the middle of our bread pudding. So I'm going to pull that out of the pan now.
And I just wanted to call out too that this could be a vegan recipe if you don't add the bacon or the turkey bacon. So that's another nice thing. I know a lot of us are maybe less experienced with vegan cooking, but maybe you've got a guest that's coming over for brunch and you want to make sure that they have options that they can eat. And so this could be a really great thing to have in your back pocket.
Definitely.
Absolutely. I think this recipe could, you could go without this turkey bacon if you wanted to make this a vegan option, or you could use one of, many vegan substitutes for protein that you could crumble inside of the middle of this if you're still looking for kind of that texture and that flavor. It would work either way. So we've got our bacon kind of drying and cooling over here. I just like to put it on a little, a little tray just with some paper towels. I find this is a really nice way to dry off that excess fat. It also will keep it crispier. If you let this sit in the pan and just kind of hang out, there is the concern that it will steam because it's still sitting in the pan. And then also it will just kind of sit in that oil and in that fat and not be as crispy. And so whenever I make, bacon, turkey bacon, I love to dry it off on some paper towels like this. Like, look at how crispy this is. I just take a piece and, like this is nice and crispy. It's still quite hot, so I'm going to let that cool down before we chop it. But I'm really happy with the texture that we've established there. So we'll set that aside and then talk about what else needs to happen before we actually get our bread pudding in the pan. So I had mentioned we're going to do a middle layer. And so that middle layer is going to consist of three things. We have some lovely roasted peanuts here, just roasted and salted peanuts. And then we have another ripe banana. So I'm going to peel the banana and I'm going to make slices out of it because we're going to put that in the middle with the turkey bacon and with these chopped peanuts. So we'll have some texture. We're going to have that, nice saltiness from the turkey bacon and from the peanuts, and also the texture from both of those, and then a little more sweetness from this banana that we're going to layer in the middle. So I'm going to peel my banana. And I'm not sure if folks know this, but I actually like to peel bananas from the backside, not from the top of the stem where it connects to the plant. I actually like to pinch at the bottom of the banana, and I find that it's a much easier way to open and peel a banana. A little trick that a chef taught me years ago when I was had to do a lot of bananas for a brunch dish, and he said, "Let me show you something." And we started peeling them that way, and it was much easier, and it was really cool to see. So maybe all of you know that already, but I always like to share that tip for banana peeling. I'm going to cut my banana in half, and then I'm just going to make nice slices out of this banana. 3 or 4 slices out of it should be just fine. We're baking this in a, like a 9 by 5 little baking pan here. So you could slice the banana kind of either direction, but I'm going to go a long ways so I can layer it into my loaf pan once we get going with our building of the bread pudding. Banana is cut. I'm just going to chop through my peanuts here. Just give these a little bit of a rough chop. They don't need to be broken down super, super small, but I just want to take them smaller than wholes and halves, just so that texture and the flavor actually goes a little bit further in our dish. And that right there feels totally fine. We don't need to spend a long time chopping these down, but just a little bit smaller than those whole and half pieces. And now it's time to prepare our pan. And so if you've ever baked a bread pudding before, you probably know that this is a wet situation that we're going to be putting into a pan and cooking in the oven so it, starts to dry out and everything sets. We want to do that in a pan that is, has some depth to it. So we're using this nice little 9 by 4, 9 by 5 loaf pan. And I'm going to give it a little bit of a spray beforehand just so my parchment paper sticks on the inside. So it's going to give it a quick spray just with a little bit of oil. And then take my piece of parchment and put that inside of my loaf pan. And I'll use my hands to just make sure that it kind of sticks to each of the corners here. And the goal being is that our parchment paper is coming up to the top of each side. And what this will do is it'll give us a really nice kind of almost handles to pull this out of our loaf pan once we let this cool down a little bit when it comes out of the oven. And so I always like to use parchment unless you have an amazing nonstick, but I would still even recommend using parchment because this is something that loves to stick to the sides of a pan. And it's no fun when you spend all this time making an awesome recipe, try to turn it out, and it's stuck inside of your loaf pan. So parchment paper, always a really nice insurance policy, if you will, to make sure that this is not going to stick. I'm just going to give this a brief spray one more time. Samantha, do we have a question in the chat?
Oh, I was just wondering if you could share how ripe you want those bananas to be in the custard and the ones that you're chopping for the filling, if those should be the same ripeness. Any details you have about that?
That's a great question, and I actually want to ask Melanie here about sort of the difference in color in banana and ripeness. How do we know which bananas are the best ones to use for baking?
Usually, the riper they are, the darker they are, the sweeter they will be, and that is usually, I mean, I wanna say 100% of the time, the best to use for baking. So here in the custard, I mean, those bananas could be totally spotted, dark, like, take freeze them if you have to, but if you have really ripe bananas, I would use them here. For the center ones, maybe you'd wanna use something like a little more like an eating style banana. I think you could go either way, but maybe something that's just more like bright yellow for the center one so you can see it. Like when you cut it, I think it'd probably be nice to see that layer.
Absolutely, and I'm sure that the texture of that sort of eating banana is just a little bit firmer than, say, our fully ripe kind of spotted and browned bananas, which have much more sugar but are a little bit softer in texture.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. So we've got our pan ready. We have everything kind of ready to build here. And so we're going to go ahead and start building our bread pudding. So I'm going to take half of my bread mixture and I'm going to get that into my pan first. So just going to take about, couple of spoons and start getting this into the bottom of my pan. And then I'm going to take the back of my spoon and really start pressing down onto the bread pudding. And this is an important step because we want to make sure that this becomes a nice cohesive loaf and nice cohesive bread pudding. And if we just kind of put it loosey-goosey into the pan, we may end up with some air gaps. We may end up with some spots that don't stick together super well. And so I always like to take the back of that spoon and really press down those first few pieces into the corners of our loaf pan just to make sure that it's all going to stay in there. Now that we have the first half in there, we can go ahead and add our middle layer. And so that is going to be our bananas, our bacon, and our chopped peanuts. And so I'm just going to take my banana first and get that layered in here into our loaf pan. Just kind of pressing it down into that mixture. And then next up, I'll move on to my peanuts here and get all of these nice crunchy peanuts on top of the banana. And then last but not least, Elvis would never forgive us if we forgot this part, is our bacon. So I'm just going to take my knife and just quickly chop through. You can see and actually hear now how crispy that is. I mean, it is nice and crunchy, and we hope that that texture, remains somewhat delicious. Make sure that remains somewhat crunchy inside of our bread pudding. So I'm going to take my bacon and get that in there next. Try to make it as even as possible, really spreading it into the corners and spreading it across the entire layer here. And I'll just take my hands and just press that down into there a little bit more. Back to our bread. Let's get the rest of it into our bowl here, or excuse me, into our loaf pan, and press down again with the back of the spoon, making sure that we're getting that top layer now to be evenly distributed and then also evenly pressed down. And if you have some nice little bits of custard kind of left in the sides of the bowl, scrape that down with the spoon because we really do want to get every little bit of that custard into here. It's going to make sure that this stays really, nice and moist and help with that texture of our entire bread pudding. So everything is in. I'm just going to keep taking the spoon and press down a little bit, especially in those corners, making sure that we have a nicely compressed bread pudding in our pan. So I'm feeling really good about this. Now, when we bake our bread pudding, I like to tent this one with just a little bit of foil while it's in the oven. We're going to bake this at 350 degrees for somewhere between 60 and 65 minutes, depending on how deep your pan is. And for the first 50 minutes of baking, I'm going to take my foil and just kind of loosely tent it. And so I'm not sealing this all the way around. And so I'm allowing moisture to still escape in the form of steam as this bakes, because if we fully clamp down this foil and had it really kind of firmly on there, what's going to happen is it will continue to steam as it cooks, and we're not going to have that moisture evaporate out into the oven and into the air. And so when I put the foil on there loosely, I really just like to kind of grab either side and just have a loose tenting of the foil. So this way it's not too tight. And then for the final 10 to 15 minutes of the baking, we're going to remove that foil and get a nice golden brown color on the top. That way we have nicely cooked interior, perfectly cooked bread pudding, and a nice golden brown top. So I'm going to go ahead. We're going to put this in the oven, 350 degrees for about 50 minutes. And while I'm sure you all wouldn't mind listening to us talk about bananas and bacon and peanut butter for the next 50 minutes while that bakes, I have prepared one this morning that I want to show you how this looks when it comes out of the oven. So let's check this out. So we have our loaf pan here. It's looking really like a gorgeous color on top. Nice golden brown, not too caramelized. Nice and warm still. This is something that we want to serve, maybe about an hour after it comes out of the oven. It'll still be nice and warm, and I love to serve this and eat this while it is, still has some nice heat onto it. You could obviously reheat this if you needed to, whether it's in a pan or in the oven again. But I'm going to go ahead and take this out of here, and we're going to see how it tastes. So I'm just going to turn over my loaf pan, and look at that. So that parchment that we added into there really acted as that nice barrier, no stickage, perfect looking bread pudding coming out of here, and this looks gorgeous. It smells delicious. We get the nice kind of caramelized notes from the bananas, and the hint of bacon is in there. As soon as we cut it, I know we'll smell the bacon and we'll definitely see it. But this is it's a really beautiful looking bread pudding. I'm so excited to cut into this. Two little toppings that I want to have here with it. Optional, but things that I really like to put on a bread pudding of this kind would be a little bit of peanut butter and a splash of maple syrup. And so this is a nice little way we can garnish it up. Totally up to you. Not essential, but something that I think will be really nice flavor-wise to go on top of there. So I'm going to cut myself a nice slice. We talked about this making about 8 portions. And so I'm going to go ahead and eat this beautiful piece right there. Look at that middle. Oh my gosh, you can see the banana running right down the middle. You can see those pieces of the of the bacon that we chopped up, and we also see little bits of the peanuts in there. And so we can really see that middle layer, but we have a nice, it's cooked on either side, and that's what we're looking for, is wanting to make sure that we have the banana, that the custard is cooked all the way through. So let's grab a little bun, put a little bit on top, tiny bit of maple syrup. And let's give this a taste.
I also sometimes love, like, putting cream cheese, treating it kind of like you would a bagel. Um, it's lots of different fun options.
This is delicious. I love the balance of flavors. We do get a good amount of sweetness from those bananas, from those dates. The actual flavor of the bread at this point has kind of encompassed all of that inside of it when we soak it in the bread pudding. But the balance between the nice sweet and salty is really amazing. As we talked about earlier, I love balance in my food, especially in my desserts and pastries. I really enjoy having the little bit of salt there. So the crunch from the peanuts, the crunch from that little bit of turkey bacon that we have inside of there, the flavors all work so well together. We can see why Elvis's classic sandwich is a hit, and it works really well in the bread pudding form with the bananas, the peanut butter, with the dates. So tasty. Melanie, I can't wait for yours to come out of the oven so you can try it as well.
Same. Cannot wait. Thank you for sharing this with us. I'm so excited for an hour from now.
Patience is key with this, but it'll be a nice little snack for you this afternoon. Um, but thank you so much for joining us today, folks. Thank you to Dole. It's so much fun to work with these products and create healthier spins on our recipes. Samantha, do you have anything in the chat before we sign off?
Oh, yeah. I was just going to call out that we've got a couple of classes coming up. There's one today at 4 for some smoky roasted fish tacos. And then we also have our first YouTube live class on Thursday at 11 a.m. PST. And why are we excited about that? Tell us all about it.
We're super excited to start doing our classes on YouTube Live. It's a really kind of seamless for you folks to get into the viewing experience onto the live stream. Also, really nice chat operations there as well. And so we're going to be transitioning our classes over to YouTube Live and join us for our first one. That's going to be Thursday, May 1st. And we're going to do the easy breezy brunch just in time for Mother's Day. Practice some of those recipes before you cook for mom the weekend following. Um, as always, find our classes on demand, and we hope to see you live again either later today or tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you very much, and we'll see you.
Thank you.